Hi YouTube, welcome to another edition of Horror Hands, and for this video I'm going to be going through the Friday the 13th series and ranking the films starting from the film I like the least going through to the film that is my favourite of the franchise. So I'm going to be going from the very first Friday the 13th all the way through the series and right up until Freddy vs. Jason. The only one I'm not including is the remake. I've seen it, but I don't actually own it. I really need to get on that and pick up a copy of it. So yeah, everything from the first film up until Freddy vs. Jason. And this is my favourite horror franchise. With the exception of one film, I really enjoy everything on the list. So it was a hard list to try and put in order, but I've had to think about it, and I've got the order of the films that I enjoy the most. So, okay, starting with the first film, the one that I enjoyed the least, and that is Jason Goes to Hell, which doesn't seem to be a lot of people's favourite in this franchise. This is the only one that I actually really don't enjoy. I can see why the director wanted to maybe do something a little different, but they kind of get rid of the sort of slasher in the woods type of thing, and in this one Jason is actually like an evil entity whose spirit transfers from person to person, and that person then goes around killing people. So Jason gets very little screen time, and it kind of drops the standard Friday the 13th feel for a more kind of supernatural type thing. Horrible idea, horrible concept for Jason, and it's a movie that doesn't work for me. I really didn't like this one. Having said that, I would like to watch it again because it's been years since I've seen it, but it's one of the few Friday the 13th films that I just don't revisit because I just don't like that concept. It doesn't work for me. Okay, so next up, and all these movies I really do enjoy. Next up is Freddy vs. Jason. I was really excited when this came out a few years ago now, and it's one that I always have fun watching. It's entertaining. I can never get enough of seeing Jason fighting Freddy, and there's some really cool moments in it. I love the cornfield scene where Jason's on fire. That was a brilliant scene. I like the idea of Freddy using Jason to get people to be afraid of him again. That was really cool. So yeah, one that I did really enjoy. Shame we didn't see like a sequel to this. Right, next up is part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan. This one's okay. It's low down on the list because it's not one that I enjoy all that much. I don't know what it is. It doesn't feel that much like a Friday the 13th film. Not just because it takes place in New York, and really it doesn't take place in New York all that much. There's just something about this one that didn't have the same kind of vibe as the others. I really like the bit at the beginning at Crystal Lake, and I really like the bits at the end with Jason walking around New York and taking in the city, and I love the things that he does while he's in the city. It's kind of the middle bit of the film on the boat that I really didn't care for. I really wish they could have really shortened that down and had it take place either more at Crystal Lake or more in Manhattan. But unfortunately, it's that middle bit that takes most of the film up. Great thing about this film though is Jason has lots of screen time. This is the film that I think I watched the most recent, and I forgot how much screen time he has in this movie. He's constantly on the screen doing stuff, which is really cool. So that's Jason Takes Manhattan. Next up, we've got Jason X, where Jason goes to space. I've always found this one to be a good film. I know people somewhat struggle with the transition of Jason going from Crystal Lake to space, which is a bit of a leap, but it's one that I've always took in my stride and I've enjoyed it. There's lots of kills in this. There's some really inventive stuff. I like the look of the kind of upgraded Jason in this one, and I just always like the sort of the mindlessness of this. Just people getting killed off left, right, and centre. Always found this to be an enjoyable one. So that's Jason X. Next one is part 7, The New Blood. This one I really enjoyed back when I was younger. This would have been probably higher on my list a few years ago, but over time, it's okay. I don't particularly like the story the same way that I used to. The story of the telekinetic girl was a bit... and I hate the ending. I've always hated the ending with the dad coming out of the lake. I just think that's really silly. And one of the worst things about this film, and it's not the filmmaker's fault, is that it was absolutely cut to shreds by the censors. There was a lot of death scenes and quite gruesome makeup effects in this one, but they were all cut out by the censors. And when you watch that movie now, you can actually kind of see it, and you can see how much it's been cut down, and you can only imagine what sort of gruesome awesomeness was actually supposed to be in the film. So it's kind of a bit of a bummer to watch this movie now, because it does feel and look very tame. Still has some good moments, but yeah, just some aspects of it really don't work for me. Next up, and I know this one is a lot of people's favourite in the series, but it's Friday the 13th Part 2. As a slasher film, I think it's great. I think it has some fantastic moments. I'm not a big fan of Sackhead Jason. That just doesn't do it for me. Hockey Mask Jason is so much more iconic to me. And I remember kind of being disappointed at the time when I first watched it, because I was thinking he was going to get his hockey mask. I didn't know much about the films at this time. And he kind of puts the sack on, and I thought, it's okay. But it is a great movie. It has some fantastic death scenes in it, some great characters. I love the Pamela Voorhees shrine. That's really creepy. So as a slasher film, it's excellent. I just much prefer Hockey Mask Jason. So that's part 2. Next up is Friday the 13th Part 5, A New Beginning. And I really like this as a slasher film. I'm disappointed with the twist that's in this. I won't reveal it for some reason you don't know what this one's about, but there's a bit of a twist to this one. It's a little bit different. It didn't work for me, but I really like it as a film, as a slasher film. Again, there's some great deaths in this one, and I just like the feel of this. I don't know, this one, I've always found this one to be quite an enjoyable film. Back before I knew about YouTube and things, I thought I was the only person that liked this one, because it doesn't seem to be all that popular. But I have noticed this one gets a bit more love over the years. So, yeah, it's one that I've always appreciated. Right, next up is the original Friday the 13th. A great movie. It's not my go-to one in the series. I remember when I was a little kid, all I knew about Friday the 13th was it was the guy with the hockey mask, and I really wanted to see it. I really wanted to check that out. And I remember buying this on video and being really excited. I got it from the cinema store in Nottingham, and I couldn't wait to see it, to see what happened. And then I found out it was actually his mum that did the killings. And as a kid, I was really disappointed. I felt cheated that I hadn't seen this cool killer with a hockey mask. So my first impression of Friday the 13th was actually one of disappointment. But over the years, you watch it, and I've grown up and I appreciate it as a fantastic film that it is. It has some great death scenes. One of the best slasher films in terms of what it does. I think this and A Bay of Blood are probably two of the greatest slasher films ever made, in the sense that they just kill people off left, right and centre in really inventive ways. And this one does not hold back at all. So one that now I know what it is and what happens and things like that, it is a film that I do really like. So that's the first one. Right, so we're into the top 3. And these 3 movies here, I love all 3 of them. They're all kind of like my go-to Friday films. Yeah, I thought about it, and I have put them in an order. So my third favourite is part 4, the final chapter. Love everything about this film. The characters are great. It has some of the best characters actually in the series. You've got that Corey Feldman's character, Crispin Glover, the twins that are in this, Crispin Glover's friend who's really funny. Jason looks awesome in it. There's some great kills. The scene at the end where Corey Feldman smacks Jason with the hockey mask is just incredible. I love that effect. That's fantastic. So all around, just a great Friday film and a great slasher film in general. So that is number 3. Number 2 is Part 6, Jason Lives. Very, very entertaining film. The beginning of this film, where Jason comes out of the grave, I think is one of the best scenes in a horror movie ever. It's fantastic. And this one introduces a little bit of humour, which for the whole tends to work. I think a couple of times it kind of gets a little bit too silly, but on the whole the humour is pretty good. And you can tell by this time they were aware that they were getting a lot of heat from censors and critics and parent groups and crap like that. And they kind of acknowledge that and make a bit of sort of light humour out of it, which I really appreciated. Jason's really cool. He's starting to look like a zombie Jason by this point. And he gets lots of screen time and does some really cool stuff. I love the Tommy Jarvis character and the sheriff in this. They're all great. So yeah, just a really, really highly entertaining film. Everything I like about Friday the 13th is represented really well in Part 6. So that's that one. So my number 1 all-time favourite Friday film is Part 3. The one where Jason finally gets his hockey mask. I've always liked this one. I love the feel to it. I love the barn setting that they have on Crystal Lake. I like the inclusion of the biker gang who turns up, who, to be fair, Jason makes light work of, but that was cool seeing him face them. The characters are pretty cool. They've got the awesome head-crushing eyeball scene, which is fantastic. The only thing about this one, because it was originally filmed in 3D, is you do have to put up with a lot of people doing things whilst inexplicably pointing things in the middle of the camera. There's a lot of kind of like this happening with people putting stuff in the screen, and it's like, okay. But yeah, I've always loved Part 3. This one was, as a kid, I knew that I learned that this was the one when Jason finally turns up in his hockey mask, and it didn't disappoint. So it's always one that I've loved. Always loved the ending to this one as well. It has a really great creepy ending. So that is my ranking of the Friday the 13th series. So let me know what you thought of that. Do you agree? Do you not agree? Which one would you put as your favourite one? I'd be interested to know. So thank you very much for watching, and stay tuned for more videos.